Hello, and welcome back to Baby Elias's stories. We now return to Gods by Terry Pratchett, Part 8. By the time he reached the river, the dragon had vanished. But a pall of smoke was hanging over the streets, and several human bucket chains had been formed to pass lumps off the river to the stricken buildings. The job was considerably hampered by the droves of people streaming out of the streets, carrying their possessions. Most of the city was wood and thatch, and they weren't taking any chances. In fact, the danger was surprisingly small, mysteriously small, when you came to think about it. Vimes had surreptitiously taken to carrying a notebook these days, and he had noted the damage as if the mere act of writing it down somehow made the world a more understandable place. Surreptitiously, an adverb, in a way that attempts to avoid notice or attention, secretively. Vimes had surreptitiously taken to carrying a notebook these days, and he had noted the damage as if the mere act of writing it down somehow made the world a more understandable place. Itym, ITYM, a coach house belonging to an inoffensive businessman who'd seen his new carriage go up in flames. Item, a small vegetable shape with pinpoint accuracy. Vimes wondered about that. He'd bought some apples in there once, and there didn't appear to be anything about it that a dragon could possibly take offense at. Still, very considerate of the dragon, he thought, as he made his way to the watch house. When you think of all the timber yards, hay ricks, thatched roofs, and oil stores it could have hit by chance, it's managed to really frighten everyone without actually harming the city. Rays of early morning sunlight were piercing the drifts of smoke as he pushed open the door. This was home. Not the bare little room over the candlemaker's shop in Wixon's alley where he slept, but this nasty brown room that smelt of unswept chimneys, Sergeant Collins' pipe, Nobby's mysterious personal problem, and, latterly, Carrot's armor polish. It was almost like home. No one else was there. He wasn't entirely surprised. He clumped up to his office and leaned back in his chair, whose cushion would have been thrown out of its basket in disgust by an incontinent dog, pulled his helmet over his eyes, and tried to think. No good rushing about. The dragon had vanished in all the smoke and confusion as suddenly as it had come. Time for rushing about soon enough. The important thing was working out where to rush to. He'd been right. Wading bird. But where did you start looking for a bloody great dragon in a city of 1 million people? He was aware that his right hand, entirely unbidden, had pulled open the bottom drawer, and 3 of his fingers, acting on sealed orders from his hind brain, had lifted out a bottle. It was one of those bottles that emptied themselves. Reason told him that sometimes he must occasionally start one, break the seal, see amber liquid glistening all the way up to the neck. It was just that he couldn't remember the sensation. It was as if the bottles arrived 2/3 empty. He stared at the label. It seemed to be Jimkin Bear Hugger's Old Selected Dragon's Blood Whiskey. Cheap and powerful. You could light fires with it. You could clean spoons. You didn't have to drink much of it to be drunk, which was just as well. It was Nobby who shook him awake with the news that there was a dragon in the city, and also that Sergeant Colin had had a nasty turn. Vimes sat and blinked owlishly while the words washed around him. Apparently, having a fire-breathing lizard focusing interestedly on one's nether regions from a distance of a few feet can upset the strongest constitution. An experience like that could leave a lasting mark on a person. Vimes was still digesting this when Carrot turned up with the librarian swinging along behind him. "Did you see it? Did you see it?" he said. "We all saw it," said Vimes. "I know all about it," said Carrot, triumphantly. "Someone's brought it here with magic. Someone's stolen a book out of the library. And guess what it's called?" "Can't even begin to," said Vimes weakly. "It's called The Summoning of Dragons." "Ook," confirmed the librarian. "Oh? What's it about?" said Vimes. The librarian rolled his eyes. "It's about how to summon dragons by magic." "Ook." "And that's illegal, that is," said Carrot happily. "Releasing feral creatures upon the streets, contrary to the wild animals' public..." Vimes groaned. "Ugh. That meant wizards." "You got nothing but trouble with wizards." "I suppose," he said, "there wouldn't be another copy of this book around, would there?" "Ook." The librarian shook his head. "And you wouldn't happen to know what's in it?" Vimes sighed. "What? Oh, 4 words?" he said warily. "First word sounds like bend, bow, sow, cow, how? Second word, small word, the, to. Yes, understood, but I meant in any kind of detail." "No, I see." "What are we going to do now, sir?" said Carrot anxiously. "It's out there," intoned Nobby. "Gone to ground, like during the hours of daylight, coiled up in its secret lair, on top of a great hoard of gold, dreaming ancient reptilian dreams from a downer time, waiting for the secret curtains of the night. When once more it will sally forth," he hesitated, and added sullenly, "What are you all looking at me like that for?" "Very poetic," said Carrot. "Well, everyone knows the real old dragons used to go to sleep on a hoard of gold," said Nobby. "Well-known folk myth." Vimes looked blankly into the immediate future. Vile though Nobby was, he was also a good indication of what was going through the mind of the average citizen. You could use him as a sort of laboratory rat to forecast what was going to happen next. "I expect you'd be really interested in finding out where that hoard is, wouldn't you?" said Vimes experimentally. Nobby looked even more shifty than usual. Well, Captain, I was thinking of having a bit of a look around. You know, when I'm off duty, of course, he added virtuously. Oh dear, said Captain Vimes. He lifted up the empty bottle and, with great care, put it back in the drawer. The elucidated brethren were nervous. A kind of fear crackled from brother to brother. It was the fear of someone who, having cheerfully experimented with pouring the powder and weighting the ball, has found that pulling the trigger had led to a god-awful bang, and pretty soon someone is bound to come and see who's making all the noise. The Supreme Grand Master knew that he had them, though. Sheep and lamb. Sheep and lamb. Since they couldn't do anything much worse than they had already done, they might as well press on and damn the world and pretend they'd wanted it like this all along. Oh, the joy of it. Only Brother Plasterer was actually happy. Let that be a lesson to all oppressive vegetable sellers, he kept saying. Yes, said Brother Doorkeeper. Only the thing is, there's no chance of us sort of accidentally summoning the dragon here, is there? That is, we have it under perfect control, said the Grand Master smoothly. Said the Supreme Grand Master smoothly. The power is ours, I can assure you. The brothers cheered up a little bit. And now, the Supreme Grand Master continued, there is the matter of the king. The brothers looked solemn, except for Brother Plasterer. Have we found him then? He said. That's a stroke of luck. You never listen, do you? Snapped Brother Watchtower. It was all explained last week. We don't go around finding anyone. We make a king. I thought he was supposed to turn up, 'cause of destiny. Brother Watchtower sniggered. We sort of help destiny along a bit. The Supreme Grand Master smiled in the depths of his robe. It was amazing, this mystic business. You tell them a lie, and then when you don't need it anymore, you tell them another lie, and tell them they are progressing along the road to wisdom. Then, instead of laughing, they follow you even more, hoping that at the heart of all the lies they'll find the truth. And bit by bit, they accept the unacceptable. Amazing. Bloody hell, that's clever, said Brother Doorkeeper. How do we do that then? Look, the Supreme Grand Master said. What we do, we find some handsome lad who's good at taking orders. He kills the dragon and Bob's your uncle. Simple, much more intelligent than waiting for a so-called real king. But Brother Plasterer seemed deep in the toils of cerebration. If we control the dragon, and we do control the dragon, right? Then we don't need anyone killing it. We just stop summoning it and everyone will be happy, right? Oh yes, said Brother Watchtower nastily. I can just see it. Can you? We just trot out, say hello, we won't set fire to your houses anymore. Aren't we nice, do we? The whole point about the thing with the king is that he'll be a sort of undeniably potent and romantic symbol of absolute authority, said the Supreme Grand Master smoothly.
That's it,
said Brother Watchtower.
a potent authority.
Oh, I see, said Brother Plasterer.
Right,
Okay, that's what the king'll be,
that's it.
said Brother Watchtower. No one going to argue with a potent authority, are they?
Too right.
said Brother Watchtower. Stroke of luck then, finding the true king right now, said Brother Plasterer. 1,000,000 to 1 chance, really. We haven't found the right king. We don't need the right king, said the Supreme Grand Master warily. For the last time, I've just found us a likely lad who looks good in a crown and can take orders and knows how to flourish a sword. Now just listen. Flourishing, of course, was important. It didn't have much to do with wielding. Wielding a sword, the Supreme Grand Master considered, was simply the messy business of dynastic surgery. It was just a matter of thrust and cut, whereas a king had to flourish one. It had to catch the light in just the right way, leaving watchers in no doubt that here was destiny's chosen. He'd taken a long time preparing the sword and shield. It had been very expensive. The shield shone like $1 in a sweep's earhole, but the sword was magnificent. It was long, shiny, shing. It looked like some genius of metalwork, one of those little Zen guys who works only by the light of dawn and can beat a club sandwich of folding steels into something with the cutting edge of a scalpel and the stopping power of a sex-crazed rhinoceros on bad acid had made and then retired in tears because he'd never, ever do anything so good again. There were so many jewels on the hilt it had to be sheathed. It had to be sheathed in velvet. You had to look at it through smoked glass. Just laying a hand on it practically conferred kingship. As for the lad, he was a distant cousin, keen and vain, and stupid in a passably aristocratic way. Currently, he was under guard in a distant farmhouse, with an adequate supply of drink and several young ladies, although what the boy seemed most interested in was mirrors. Probably hero material, the Supreme Grand Master thought gloomily.
I suppose, said Brother Watchtower, that he isn't the real heir to the throne.
What do you mean? Said the Supreme Grand Master.
Well, you know how it is. Fate plays funny tricks. Ha ha! It'd be a laugh, wouldn't it? Said Brother Watchtower, if this lad turned out to be the real king after all this trouble.
There is no real king anymore, snapped the Supreme Grand Master. What do you expect? Some people wandering in the wilderness for hundreds and hundreds of years, patiently handing down a sword and a birthmark, some sort of magic? He spat at the word. Tui! He'd make use of magic, means to an end. End justifies means and so forth. But to go around believing it had some sort of moral force, like logic, made him wince. Good grief, man! Be logical! Be rational! Even if any of the old royal family survived, the bloodline be so watered down by now that there must be thousands of people who lay claim to the throne. Even, he tried to think of the least likely claimant, even someone like Brother Dunnikin. He stared at the assembled brethren. Don't see him here tonight, by the way.
Funny thing that, said Brother Watchtower thoughtfully. Didn't you hear?
What?
He got bitten by a crocodile on his way home last night, poor little bugger.
What?
1,000,000 to 1 chance it'd escaped from a menagerie or something and was lying low in his backyard. He went to feel under his doormat for his door key and it had him by the fumes.
Brother Watchtower fumbled under his robe and produced a grubby brown envelope.
We're having a whip round to buy him some grapes and that. I don't know whether you'd like to,
Put me down for $3, said the Supreme Grand Master.
Brother Watchtower nodded. Funny thing, he said, I already have.
Just a few more nights, thought the Supreme Grand Master. By tomorrow, the people'll be so desperate, they'd crown even a one-legged troll if he got rid of the dragon. And we'll have a king. And he'll have an advisor, a trusted man, of course. And this stupid rabble can go back to the gutter. No more dressing up. No more ritual. No more summoning the dragon. I can give it up, he thought. I can give it up any time I like. The streets outside the patrician's palace were thronged. There was a manic air of carnival. Vimes ran a practiced eye over the assortment before him. It was the usual Ankh-Morpork mob in times of crisis. Half of them were here to complain. A quarter of them were here to watch the other half. And the remainder were here to rob, importune, or sell hot dogs to the rest. There were a few new faces, though. There were a number of grim men with big swords slung over their shoulders and whips slung on their belts, striding through the crowds. News spreads quick, don't it? Observed a familiar voice by his ear. Morning, Captain. Vimes looked into the grinning, cadaverous face of cut-me-own-throat Dibbler, a purveyor of absolutely anything that could be sold hurriedly from an open suitcase in a busy street and was guaranteed to have fallen off the back of an ox cart. Morning, Throat, said Vimes absently. What are you selling? Genuine article, Captain. Throat leaned closer. He was the sort of person who could make good morning sound like a once-in-a-lifetime, never-to-be-repeated offer. His eyes swiveled back and forth in their sockets, like two rodents trying to find a way out. Can't afford to be without it, he hissed. Anti-dragon cream. Personal guarantee. If you're incinerated, you get your money back. No quibble. What are you saying? Said Vimes slowly. If I understand the wording correctly, is that if I am baked alive by the dragon, you'll return the money? Upon personal application, said Cut-Me-Own-Throat. He unscrewed the lid from a jar of vivid green ointment and thrust it under Vimes's nose. Made from over 50 different rare spices and herbs to a recipe known only to a bunch of ancient monks what live on some mountain somewhere. $1 a jar, and I'm cutting my own throat. It's a public service, really, he added piously. You've got to hand it to those ancient monks, brewing it up so quickly, said Vimes. Clever buggers, agreed Cut-Me-Own-Throat. It must be all that meditation and yak yogurt.
So what's happening, Throat? Said Vimes. Who are all the guys with the big swords?
Dragon hunters, Captain. The patrician announced a reward of $50,000 to anyone who brings him the dragon's head. Not attached to the dragon either. He's no fool, that man.
What?
That's what he said. It's all written on posters.
$50,000?
Not chicken feed, eh?
More like dragon fodder, said Vimes.
It'd bring trouble. You mark his words.
I'm amazed you're not grabbing a sword and joining in.
I'm more in what you might call the service sector, Captain. Throat looked both ways, conspiratorially, and then passed Vimes a slip of parchment. It said, anti-dragon mirror shields, $1, $500. Portable layer detectors, $250. Dragon piercing arrows, $100 per each. Shovels, $5. Picks, $5. Sacks, $1. Vimes handed it back.
Why the sacks? He said.
On account of the horde, said Throat.
Oh, yes, said Vimes gloomily. Of course.
Tell you what, said Throat. Tell you what. For our boys in brown, 10% off.
And you're cutting your own throat, Throat.
15% for officers, urged Throat, as Vimes walked away. The cause of the slight panic in his voice was soon apparent. He had plenty of competition. The people of Ankh-Morpork were not by nature heroic, but were by nature salesmen. In the space of a few feet, Vimes could have bought any number of magical weapons, genuine certificate of authenticity with everyone. A cloak of invisibility, a good touch, she thought, and he was really impressed by the way the store owner was using a mirror with no glass in it, and by way of lighter relief, dragon biscuits, balloons and windmills on sticks. Copper bracelets, guaranteed to bring relief from dragons, were a nice thought. There seemed to be as many sacks and shovels about as there were swords. Gold. That was it. The horde. Ha! $50,000. An officer of the watch earned $30 a month and had to pay to have his own debts beaten out. What he couldn't do with $50,000. Vimes thought about this for a while, and then thought of the things he could do with $50,000. There were so many more of them, for a start. He almost walked into a group of men clustered around a poster nailed to the wall. It declared, indeed, that the head of the dragon that had terrorized the city would be worth $50,000 to the brave hero that delivered it to the palace. One of the cluster, who from his size, weaponry, and the way he was slowly tracing the lettering with his finger, Vimes decided was a leading hero, was doing the reading for the others.
To her palaki, he concluded.
50,000, said one of them reflectively, rubbing his chin.
Cheap job,
said the intellectual. Well below the rate. Should be half the kingdom and his daughter's hand in marriage.
Yes, but he ain't a king, he's a patrician.
Well, half his patrimony or whatever. What's his daughter like? The assembled hunters didn't know.
He's not married,
Vimes volunteered.
and he hasn't got a daughter.
They turned and looked him up and down. He could see the disdain in their eyes. They probably got through dozens like him every day.
Not got a daughter?
said one of them.
Wants people to kill dragons and he hasn't got a daughter?
Vimes felt, in an odd way, that he ought to support the lord of the city.
He's got a little dog that he's very fond of, he said helpfully.
Bleeding disgusting, not even having a daughter, said one of the hunters. And what's $50,000 these days? You spend that much in nets.
"'S right, said another. People think it's a fortune, but they don't reckon on, well, it's not pensionable. There's all the medical expenses. You've got to buy and maintain your own gear. Wear and tear on virgins, nodded a small fat hunter. Yeah, and then there's... What? My specialty is unicorns, the hunter explained with an embarrassed smile.
Oh, right. The first speaker looked like someone who'd always been dying to ask the question. I thought they were very rare these days.
You're right there. You don't see many unicorns either, said the unicorn hunter.
Vimes got the impression that, in his whole life, this was his only joke.
Yeah, well, times are hard,
said the first speaker sharply.
Monsters are getting more uppity too, said another. I heard where this guy, he killed this monster in this lake, no problem, stuck its arm up over the door.
Pour enconger les autres, said one of the listeners.
Right, and you know what? It's Mum come and complain. It's actual Mum come right down to the hall next day and complain. Actually complained. That's the respect you get.
The females are always the worst, said another hunter gloomily.
I knew this cross-eyed Gorgon once. Oh, she was a terror. Kept turning her own nose to stone.
It's our asses on the line every time, said the intellectual. I mean, I wish I had $1 for every horse I've had eaten out from underneath me.
Right, $50,000. He can stuff it. Yeah, right, cheapskate. Let's go have a drink. Right.
They nodded in righteous agreement and strode off towards the mended drum, except for the intellectual, who sidled uneasily back to Vimes. What sort of dog? He said.
What?
Said Vimes. I said, what sort of dog?
A small wire-haired terrier, I think, said Vimes.
The hunter thought about this for some time. Nah, he said eventually, and hurried off after the others.
He's got an aunt in Pseudopolis,
I believe, Vimes called after him. There was no response. The captain of the watch shrugged and carried on through the throng to the patrician's palace, where the patrician was having a difficult lunchtime.
Gentlemen, he snapped, I really don't see what else there is to do.
The assembled civic leaders muttered amongst themselves.
At times like this, it's traditional that a hero comes forth,
said the president of the Guild of Assassins.
A dragon slayer. Where is he? That's what I want to know. Why aren't our schools turning out young people with the kind of skills society needs?
$50,000 doesn't sound much, said the chairman of the Guild of Thieves.
It may not be much to you, my dear sir, but it is all the city can afford,
said the patrician firmly. If it doesn't afford any more than that, I don't think there'll be a city for long, said the thief.
And what about trade? Said the representative of the Guild of Merchants. People aren't going to sail here with a cargo of rare comestibles just to have it incinerated, are they?
Comestibles.
Comestible, an item of food. Gentlemen, gentlemen, the patrician raised his hands in a conciliatory fashion. It seems to me, he went on, taking advantage of the brief pause, that what we have here is a strictly magical phenomenon. I would like to hear from our learned friend on this point. Someone nudged the Arch-Chancellor of Unseen University, who had nodded off.
Eh? What?
Said the wizard, startled into wakefulness.
We were wondering, said the patrician loudly, what you were intending to do about this dragon of yours.
The Arch-Chancellor was old, but a lifetime of survival in the world of competitive wizardry and the Byzantine politics of Unseen University meant that he could whip up a defensive argument in a split second.
Byzantine.
Byzantine, relating to Byzantium, now Istanbul. A system or situation excessively complicated and typically involving a great deal of administrative detail. Byzantine. You didn't remain Arch-Chancellor for long if you let that sort of ingenious remark whiz past your ear.
My dragon? He said. It's well known that the great dragons are extinct, said the patrician briskly. And besides, their natural habitat was definitely rural. So it seems to me that this one must be With respect, Lord Veterinary, said the Arch-Chancellor. It has often been claimed that dragons are extinct, but the current evidence, if I may make so bold, tends to cast a certain doubt on the theory. As to habitat, what we are seeing here is simply a change of behavior pattern, occasioned by the spread of urban areas into the countryside, which has led many hitherto rural creatures to adopt, nay, in many cases, to positively embrace a more municipal mode of existence. And many of them thrive on the new opportunities thereby open to them. For example, foxes are always knocking over my dustbins. He beamed. He'd managed to get all the way through it without actually needing to engage his brain. "Are you saying," said the assassin slowly, "that what we've got here is the first civic dragon?" "That's evolution for you," said the wizard, happily. "It should do well too," he added. "Plenty of nesting sites and a more than adequate food supply." Silence greeted this statement until the merchant said, "What exactly is it that they do eat?" The thief shrugged. "I seem to recall stories about virgins chained to huge rocks," he volunteered. "It'll starve round here then," said the assassin. "We're on loam."
Loam.
Loam, a fertile soil of clay and sand containing humus. Loam.
They used to go around ravening.
Ravening.
Ravening? Ravening of a ferocious wild animal, extremely hungry and hunting for prey. They used to go around ravening, said the thief. Don't know if that's any help.
Anyway, said the leader of merchants, it seems to be your problem again, my lord.
5 minutes later, the patrician was striding the length of the oblong office, fuming.
They were laughing at me, said the patrician. I could tell.
Did you suggest a working party? Said Once.
Of course I did. It didn't do the trick this time. You know, I really am inclined to increase the reward money.
I don't think that would work, my lord. Any proficient monster slayer knows the rate for the job.
Ha! Half the kingdom,
muttered the patrician. And your daughter's hand in marriage, said Once.
I suppose an aunt isn't acceptable,
the patrician said hopefully. Tradition demands a daughter, my lord. The patrician nodded gloomily.
Perhaps we can buy it off,
he said aloud. Are dragons intelligent? I believe the word traditionally is cunning, my lord, said Once. I understand they have a liking for gold. Really, what do they spend it on? They sleep on it, my lord.
What? Do you mean in a mattress?
No, my lord. On it. The patrician turned this fact over in his mind. Don't they find it rather knobbly? He said. So I would imagine, sir. I don't suppose anyone has ever asked. Can they talk? They're apparently good at it, my lord. Ah, interesting. The patrician was thinking. If it can talk, it can negotiate. If it can negotiate, then I have it by the short, by the small scales. Then I have it by the short, by the small scales, or whatever it is they have. And they are said to be silver-tongued, said Once. The patrician leaned back in his chair. Only silver? He said. There was the sound of muted voices in the passageway outside, and Vimes was ushered in. Ah, Captain, said the patrician. What progress? I'm sorry, my lord, said Vimes, as the rain dripped off his cape. Towards apprehending this dragon, said the patrician firmly. The wadding bird, said Vimes. You know very well what I mean, said veterinary sharply. Investigations are in hand, said Vimes automatically. The patrician snorted. All you have to do is find its lair, he said. Once you have the lair, you have the dragon. That's obvious. Half the city seems to be looking for it. If there is a lair, said Vimes. Once looked up sharply. Why do you say that? We are considering a number of possibilities, said Vimes woodenly. If it has no lair, where does it spend its days? Said the patrician. Inquiries are being pursued, said Vimes. Then pursue them with alacrity and find the lair, said the patrician sourly. Yes, sir. Permission to leave, sir. Very well, but I shall expect progress by tonight. Do you understand? Now why did I wonder if it has a lair, Vimes thought, as he stepped out into the daylight and the crowded square. Because it didn't look real, that's why. If it isn't real, it doesn't need to do anything we expect. How can it walk out of an alley it didn't go into? Once you've ruled out the impossible, then whatever is left, however improbable, must be the truth. The problem lay in working out what was impossible, of course. That was the trick, all right. There was also the curious incident of the orangutan in the night time.